Hello, I am Jay Horns Racer, and this is the home of all things Btcc. Back, it is another race week. Silverstone, Donington Park this weekend. We've just had Silverstone weekend before, some good racing there. Obviously, we've got the first look at the new hybrid car. We knew it was going to be quick in the hands of Jordan, but it looks like it does have some real pace, so that's pretty cool. We're super excited to have a bit more time to make this video, a bit more time to get my notes together, ready to film it. But here we are, my review of Silverstone, and I'll look ahead obviously into Donington as I usually do. So let's get into it, and I've gone through with my 5 to watch that I picked for Silverstone. So let's go through those 5 drivers. Starting off with Tom Ingram, who qualified second, had 2 P2s and a P12. And that's his joint best qualifying of the season. Obviously, he had less weight this weekend, and only 5th in the championship going into it, so that's probably helped. But that is his first podium since Knockhill, which surprised me a little bit. I don't know if the weight's been affecting him a bit too much. He was actually picking up points still, but obviously to get his first podium is pretty cool. On our second time this season, he's had 2 podiums in the same weekend. And the first time with podiums in back-to-back races, so obviously race 1 and race 2, we got second place in each. The first time down this season, got them back to second in the championship. 36 points behind Sutton, who did extend his lead by 7 points this weekend. And I think the Hyundai, especially in the hand of Tom, looks like a car that could win the championship. But I just think it struggles too much with the weight. Tom's also struggling. That's one of Tom's issues, is qualifying in race 1 with the second most weight he's had for most of the part of the season. He struggled, obviously, when he lost a bit. He went to the weekend with 5th most weight. He managed to qualify second and then get 2 P2s. I don't think the weight quite affected cars, especially the ones at the front, as much as Silverstone, which wasn't too bad. It affected them going into qualifying. I have to be fair with that, it was hard for them to make up places. But it was a good weekend for Tom overall, but he's back in second in the championship going to Donington this weekend. That could make it tough. Roy Butcher qualified first, had 2 wins and a P13, back to 7th in the championship. I thought the Toyota was exceptionally quick this weekend, especially even in the hands of Sam Smelt. It was unlucky for race 1, wasn't he? He had an instance in one of the support races where unfortunately there was a bit of a wet patch at the front of the grid. They pushed all the cars back a row, but it just meant when Robbie came off the line, he got a bit of wheel spin and stuff like that. Only lost 1 place to Ingram, which wasn't too bad in the end, and thankfully he did get that back. But the car seems to struggle when it every time Rory's gone into a weekend and he's been any higher than 8th in the championship. If he's 8th and below, he seems to be not too bad carrying the weight. But for some reason, when he's been any higher than 7th or higher, he seems to have struggled going into a weekend. So if that is true, it could struggle going into Donington this weekend. And of course, if he follows on from his current form, super weekend at Silverstone will mean poor weekend at Donington. That's the way Rory's season's been gone. The overtake for the lead in race 1 was a bit debatable with that whole yellow flag incident. I'm guessing maybe just the yellow flag wasn't supposed to be there. We've had the good news this week that there will be onboard messages for the drivers, so they'll know when there's a yellow flag, safety cars, things like that. So there'll be no disputing that kind of thing. But Roy was really good, and Toyota overall was a quick car. Dan Rowbottom qualified 7th, finished 8th, 6th and 9th. A weekend where Dan just kind of stayed in the middle. Wasn't slow, it wasn't particularly quick. Just stayed around when he qualified. Didn't seem to have the pace to kind of push on, go for podiums and things like that. But certainly wasn't slow and wasn't falling backwards. Further back into the pack. Wasn't a bad weekend. But it was a decent little weekend to get back on track. But the Hondas overall, I didn't think were particularly quick this weekend anyway. I don't think it was a track that was working for the FK Honda. So not too bad of a weekend for Dan there. Ollie Jackson qualified 17th, so it wasn't too great, but got himself up to 12th. I think he had an incident race 2 with Oliphant, which pushed him back to 18th. But then got back to P10 in race 3. Much better weekend for Jackson. The most points he's had in a weekend since Snetterton. And the first double points finish since that weekend as well. 10 points he scored this weekend is the same amount as the last 5 weekends between Donington and Silverstone. So that's how poor he's been in the middle of the season, pretty much, Ollie Jackson, which surprised me. But the Ford was very quick. Obviously, Ollie Jackson wasn't carrying any weight this weekend in any of the races, but it was very quick at pushing forward, being weight free. It was just a shame about the instant race too. It looks like almost coming onto the straight, Oliphant and Jackson made a bit of contact. We saw Oliphant go out wide, but it seems like Jackson lost some places as well. If it hadn't been for that, Ollie Jackson probably would have been within the draw for reverse grid. He did that last season and won the race, so he would have been in the chance of at least a podium, I think. And I think the speed of the Ford, especially when it wasn't carrying weight, was very quick, and he would have done that. But it was a much better race from Jackson, so let's see if he can continue that for the rest of the season. And my final one was Jack Goff, and that was kind of ended him having a good weekend starting in qualifying. Looked up quite quick in practice, but had to have an engine change between free practice 2 and qualifying. Managed to get out on track while he qualified P28, technically P29, because that hybrid was ahead of him, but obviously that was kind of a ghost car really. He didn't have a setup on the car when he went out, so it was poor, but he managed to get back to P19 in race 1, which wasn't too bad, and then to P15, so 2 point scoring finishes there to win the weekend, bearing in mind where it was in qualifying. He did manage to pick that up, thankfully. Wasn't too bad, might not be much, but that I think the Cooper had pace, to be fair. In race 2, at the end of sector 2, at the end of the straight, Jack Goff actually put down the fastest at the top speed down the straight. I think it was actually matched by only the hybrid, which obviously has the boost. So that shows the Cooper has actually got a straight line speed. It's something that it's been struggling for. So they've found some straight line speed in that Cooper, and they have a good qualifying. If we know hiccups, they seem to always have hiccups. Unfortunately, team hard in those Coopers. Hopefully, they will be able to push forward going into Donington this weekend. And it's the first time that Jack's actually managed to get points in two races in a weekend since Brandt Hatch Indy. So Jack saves Ollie Jackson. Has had a struggle in the middle of the season. I wouldn't say it was a great weekend for Jack, but it was an improved weekend. Bearing in mind where the qualifying was, had he got qualifying that the car probably deserved, which is maybe a top 10, we could have seen some real major points there. But that is my review of my 5 to watch that I picked in my last video. So we'll move on now to 5 drivers that I thought had a good weekend. So moving on to these 5 drivers, somebody that actually follow on from what I said last time. This won't take too long. So Roy Butcher, first pole of the season out of him. Previous highest place was a 3rd. First podium and win since race 2 at Donington Park. For some time, Rory's been needing that. And a first highest mileage, 2 wins or podiums in a weekend this season. Going on form is destined for a whole weekend this weekend at Donington, unfortunately. But if he can beat out Hoodoo, he's had of one good weekend, one bad weekend, then he should be okay. Did quite well there last season. The 4 went quite well. But, so he's not in the 4, is he? So he's in the Toyota, completely got that mixed up. But Ingram did well in Toyota, and Butcher himself did well at Donington last season. But it was a really impressive weekend from Butcher, bearing in mind the kind of season he's had. I think underrated what he did. I've then also gone for Dan Lloyd. Highest qualifying of the season for him with P5. Previous before that was a P8. First podium of the season. He managed to get 2 of them. And you got a 3rd in race 1 and a 2nd in race 3. Easily his highest point scoring weekend of the season. He got 38. Previous before that was 22 at Brandt Hatch Indy. I thought the Vauxhall overall looked a lot quicker. Plato was quite quick too, not as quick as Lloyd without the weight, but then race 2 it struggled with the weight. He was only P11 in the end, dropped back into the pack. It seems to be a track that some cars were okay. Like obviously Butcher managed to win 2 races. He had the full weight in the 2nd race as well. But unfortunately, Vauxhall in particular rarely struggles, I think, when it gets some weight in, especially the higher weights. And that is actually Dan Lloyd's highest career points total. 120 points he's got now. Highest he's ever had in the season before was 2018 when he got 87 points. He didn't do his first 3 rounds, so he had 9 races missing. But he's already beaten his previous best by 33 points. And he does still have 2 race weekends, so 6 races left to go So well done to download on that. Next one is Chris Smiley. I thought it was pretty much a quiet weekend. I didn't really notice him more until I went back and looked at his results. Picked up 25 points. That's actually his highest total of the season, one more than he picked up at Brands Hatch, Indy and Knockhill. So not a massive points total, but not a respectable total. The P4 in race 3 was his highest of the season, so that was pretty good. 122 points, and now he's beaten his total from the whole of last season with 6 races still to go. So he's saying about how that Hyundai has been progressing. Obviously, you've seen how good it is with Ingram. Smiley drove it last season, and he's already got more points this season than he got in the whole of last season. And he still has no 6 races to score points in. Shows how much the cars come on, how much better Smiley is doing in the car this season. It just seems like the team overall are doing better. So well done, Smiley, on that. Ingram, I mentioned him before. Joint highest qualifying, P2, he had the same as Snetterton. The only other track time he's had weight in the car when he, but not second most weight. Obviously the last time he didn't carry the second highest weight for a qualifying session. First time this season with back-to-back podiums in a weekend, and only second time this season Tom's got 2 podiums in the same weekend. It's great, and he had a great weekend, Ingram. It shows that Hyundai and Tom are a good package. He's quick in it. It just struggles with the weight, unfortunately. If it could deal with the weight, I think Ingram would be right in their chance of the championship. I just think the way that the Infiniti and the BMW, the Infiniti in particular, can carry the weight, especially the maximum weight, is why unfortunately it's a step ahead in the championship. And Ollie Jackson, obviously one I picked before, most points Ollie has got in a weekend since Snetterton. He got 10, obviously. More points than he got in the last 5 rounds combined. Silverstone's always been a good track for Ollie. Ollie got the win last season. I think he would have got points in all 3 races had he not had that instant race to Oliphant. Like I said, he would have been in for a reverse grid place. I think would have at least started near the front, if not on the front row. And I think if he'd done that, he really could have been in with a race win for the weekend. So it's just unfortunate that that instant race to it really, I wouldn't say ruined his weekend, but it stopped him from having a better weekend than he did. But it's a much improved weekend than we've been seeing from Ollie Jackson. So they are my 5 good weekends. 3 of them drivers were the same ones I had from my 5 picks. But then at the same time, maybe that's a good sign that I picked up some good drivers. So now I've got some my 5 bad weekends. Some people are pretty much stinkers, some of the top drivers I think. So we'll go through these next. So the 5 drivers I've gone for bad weekends. Starting off, Gordon Shedden, have to pick him. Qualified 14th. 4th consecutive qualifying, he's been outside the top 10, which when I looked at that, I was so surprised that Shedden's been there. Had a DNF, a P19 and a P21. Just seemed to keep getting caught up in incidents. Race 1, he had a little incident, didn't he, with what was like Smelt, both of them retired. That's caught in DNF. And race 2, had a bit of an incident with Edwards, not necessarily his fault. But unfortunately it doesn't really help him. I don't think he lost much speed, but maybe he got a bit of damage to slow him down. But I just didn't think the Honda overall showed a lot of pace all weekend. It just couldn't push forward. Normally you see Shedden, he's at the back with no weight, he'd be able to push forward, but it just didn't happen for him. And that's the first time this season that Shedden hasn't scored a single point in the weekend. And unfortunately Shedden's had some really good weekends, but the inconsistency of a weekend like this was a really bad weekend with no points, but that inconsistency is what's going to cost Shedden a chance of the title. If he is in the championship next season, he needs to get back to picking up points like of Shedden and Hill and Sutton, Hill and Tegerton have been doing. On with Adam Morgan, qualified 21st, his joint worst qualifying of the season, same as he got at Brands Hatch Indy. Struggled after an interchange before qualifying, same as Goff. Didn't qualify well, but then had a DNF, a P17 and a P16. Did get involved in a couple of incidents and crashes. So as the DNF didn't have race 1, got up to P17 in race 2, so made a few places back, thinking maybe getting the points for race 3, but just didn't. Only made one more place. But he's just another driver to be at that BMW again for some reason. Sicily one in particular just didn't seem to have the pace to push forward. I think it was quite a hard track to overtake on, unfortunately. Silverstone is the one thing I would like to see us So we have 2 races at Thruxton this season. Can we not make another layout at Silverstone? And we know there are other layouts. We use the full track like the Formula 1 cars do. That'd be pretty interesting. Wouldn't get many laps, but would make some more overtaking chances perhaps. It's the first time since Brands Hatch Indy that Morgan has been in the top 10 in the championship now. I think he'll probably get back in there by the end, but just unfortunately another weekend, another driver with 0 points like Shedden. Just poor unfortunately. Senna Proctor qualified 13th, worst qualifying since Brands Hatch Indy, but this was the highest place he's been in the championship going into a race weekend. DNF in race 2 wrecked this weekend, but he did get the fastest lap in fact. I think Cook originally had it, but was disqualification, he lost that, so the fastest lap went to Proctor. Race 3 he only recovered to 17th, only scored 3 points. That's the worst weekend since Snetterton. Obviously Snetterton was his first weekend in the car. Started off with a new driver ballast and just never got to grips with Snetterton. It's his worst weekend since then, but I think it was just further proof that unfortunately the Honda struggled. Proctor's been in such good form pretty much since Brands really. He's had really good form, but just struggled with pace. And then my 4th driver is another Honda, and that's Josh Cook. But he was the one Honda who seemed to have some pace, but things out of control. Qualified 4th and finished P5 in race 1 to show good pace. Finished P2 in race 2 with the fastest lap, but then he was disqualified at the end of the race for the ride height infringement. The roller bar would not fit into the car, and he said it was maybe a bit of damage, but he was disqualified all the same, lost his fastest lap as well, and then only got back to P18. He was carrying 66 kilos of ballast race 3 from the back of the grid because he finished P2 in race 2. Even though he was disqualified, he still have to the penalty carrying that weight, so he didn't get himself back on the points. First time this season that Cook hasn't scored points in at least 2 races in a weekend, and it shows that Cook's had good consistency this season. And the first time he hasn't had a podium in a weekend since Donington Park. I think he may have just lost grip with Sutton in the championship. Unfortunately, now he's not too far behind the others still, but that gap to Sutton is a little bit too much. He's going to need a stellar weekend at Donington to be able to claw some of that back. As I said at the start of the season, I thought 10 people might be in with a chance at the championship. I think it could be down to as little as 3 really, if we're talking especially if we're talking realistic. But it's getting tough, and this one might be a little harsh picking this driver. But I went with Sam Smell. He didn't score points again. It still hasn't scored points in the first round at Thruxton at the start of the season, but showed good pace in the car in practice, and car was clearly very quick. I told you it had the pace as showed by Roy having 2 race wins, but it said Smells had 2 DNFs and a P20. It just didn't yield the results that the car really should have got. And then Sam's had a tough season, but we just would expect a little bit more there. That just isn't what you should be getting in the car. He showed pace, but just wasn't getting the results, wasn't getting the overtakes. It's just, yeah, I wouldn't say it was Sam's fault as such, some of the incidents he was caught up in, but the car had pace and he should have been a lot higher than where he was, unfortunately. So that's kind of me done with Silverstone now. Not too bad. We look forward to this weekend at Donington. I'm going to go ahead with my 5 drivers to watch. I think it's getting to the point of the season where it is just as one to the front now, to kind of keep an eye out and watch, because they're so consistent, to be honest. Normally you get drivers all the way up and down the grid making to pick up wins, but it does tend to seem to be the same few drivers managing to get those wins pretty much now. And Sutton just picks up points and points and points and points and points. But this video's gone for quite long now, so I'm going to go ahead and say that's the end of Silverstone, and we'll now move on to my 5 drivers to watch at Silverstone. I apologise for that. I meant my 5 drivers to watch at Donington. So not too big of a list here. Let's go through them quickly. So I've gone with Chris Smiley. I think he deserves a shout out. Got the first podium for the Hyundai at Donington last season. Goes into weekend ballast 3, so that's certainly going to help go to qualifying in race 1. And he's consistently now finishing in the top 10, knocking on the door of the podium. I think he's definitely benefiting from Ingram being in the car. I think Ingram's pushing that car on, and I think Chris is learning from Tom as well. And I think this could be the weekend that Chris gets his first podium of the season. He hasn't quite won yet, best to finish it on 4th, but I think this could be the weekend for Chris. Moving on now, we've got Colin Teggerton. Took a pole, a win, and a second at Donington last season. Goes into the weekend 4th in the championship. So out of the ones in the championship, he's reasonably light compared to them. Only danger could be the weather, pretty much. It's been battering down with rain, hasn't it? Very windy. We know the BMWs don't like wind and rain. So if it is a wet weekend, then I think the BMWs will struggle. Dry weekend, I think Colin will be right up there. He's always at the front with qualifying anyway. That's how he's so consistent with his qualifying. So if he is near the front, if he gets it on the front row, I would expect Colin to have a very good weekend, which he's going to need to try and catch Sutton. I've also gone with all of them. The BMW overall went well at Donington last season. He goes into the weekend ballast free, which is definitely going to help him. And he had 3 top 10 finishes last season at Donington, including the podium in race 2. So showed good pace in the BMW at Donington last season. But just the only thing that could be a thorn in the side, the same as obviously Colin, he will have trouble if it rains. BMW doesn't like the rain, it struggles in the rain. So both Colin and Tom will struggle for pace, I think, if it rains. Next driver, I've gone with Cook. So he's down to 5th in the championship now. So out of the 5 that are still in the chance of the championship, I think Cook will go to the latest, so he's got a chance. In the FK8 Honda last season, won 9 top 10 finishes at Donington. That's between the Dynamics cars and the BTCC cars. So that shows just how quick the Hondas were at Donington. And that included a win for Camish and the podium for Cook, so it showed that Cook had pace there. Unfortunately, got knocked off in race 1, didn't he? At Donington last year, he was pushing down to the back, and he still managed to get back and get a podium. So clearly, Cook is good at the track and he has pace. But he really needs a good weekend to have a chance at the championship. If he doesn't have a good weekend and close that gap, probably considerably, I'd say, to Sutton. Sutton's been so good this season at not getting into scrapes and scraps and knock himself off and losing points. If Sutton doesn't manage to do that again, it's going to be hard for Cook to get back in it. But Cook just needs to focus on his own races and try and get some good points. And finally, I have gone for Infinity, but I've gone with Aidan Moffat. I think the informed driver at the moment. The car was very quick at Donington last season in the hand of Sutton. Moffat wasn't quite so quick, but it was still in the early point of it and getting used to that Infinity. Moffat seems to be up to speed with the Infinity now. He seems so much quicker and so much more confident in what he can do in the car. And the car carries weight well. He's 6th in the championship at the moment. So he's not the heaviest. I think the Infinity should carry that weight very well. I don't think it should affect Moffat too much. If it does rain, the Infinity tends to deal far better with the rain and its rear-wheel drive counterpart, the BMW. And Moffat's had some good races in the wet before, because he had a second at Silverstone in 2019 in the Infinity. And he's also had a win before in his Mercedes at Donington, so he's got a good history there as well. So I'd expect Moffat to do well at Donington Park this weekend. So you're getting 2 tracks mixed up there, Silverstone, Donington. So they're my 5 drivers to watch at Donington Park. I think they will be good. I think it should be some good racing. If it rains, it's really going to throw something different in the mix. Didn't pick any Cooper drivers this time, because all those seem to be improving and getting quicker. They're not quite at the front yet, and I've got really much data to compare them off for last season, especially when they were driving the VWs, which weren't too quick at Donington last season, but we'll see how they go. But thank you for joining me for today's video. Let's look forward to this weekend's racing, and I'll see you again next time for my review of Donington Park. See you then.